My name is Andrea, and I'm 32 years old. I've always been driven to succeed, and after years of hard work, I finally built a thriving business from the ground up. It's a company that specializes in sustainable architecture, and it's been my passion project for years. I remember the early days, working tirelessly to get my designs just right, poring over blueprints and meeting with clients to ensure their visions came to life. My company, Verdi Designs, quickly gained a reputation for innovative and eco-friendly solutions. As the years went by, my team grew, and so did our portfolio. We took on bigger projects, worked with renowned architects, and even landed a few high-profile clients. I was proud of what we'd accomplished, and I felt like I was living my dream. I had a talented team behind me, people who shared my vision and were dedicated to delivering exceptional results. One of those people was Juliana, a bright and ambitious young architect who had joined my team a few years ago. She was talented, eager to learn, and had a spark that I couldn't help but notice. I saw a lot of potential in her, and I decided to give her more responsibilities, trusting her to lead some of our smaller projects. Little did I know, that decision would change everything. Juliana quickly proved herself to be a valuable asset to my team. She was always eager to take on new challenges and was willing to put in the extra hours to ensure projects were completed to perfection. I was impressed with her work ethic and her natural talent for design. As time went on, I began to give her more responsibilities, trusting her to lead smaller projects and present designs to clients. She excelled in these roles, and clients raved about her creativity and attention to detail. I started to see her as a potential protege, someone who could help take Verdi Designs to the next level. I decided to bring her into more high-level meetings, giving her access to sensitive information about the company's plans and strategies. Juliana was grateful for the opportunity, and she assured me that she would continue to work hard and prove herself worthy of the trust I had placed in her. I believed her, and I thought that I had made the right decision in giving her more responsibility. As the months went by, Juliana's role in the company continued to grow. She became one of my most trusted advisors, and I relied on her to help me make important decisions about the direction of the company. But despite her success, I started to notice small things that didn't quite add up. She would sometimes be vague about her whereabouts or the details of her projects. At the time, I brushed it off as paranoia, thinking that I was just being overly cautious. But looking back, I realized that those small red flags were indicative of a larger issue. Juliana was playing a game of cat and mouse with me, hiding her true intentions behind a mask of loyalty and dedication. And I, blinded by my trust in her, didn't see it coming. As time went on, Juliana's influence in the company continued to grow. She was always present in meetings, offering insights and suggestions that seemed valuable. I started to rely on her more and more, trusting her judgment and expertise. She had a way of understanding the intricacies of our business that few others did. One day, I tasked her with leading a major project, one that would be a game changer for Verdi Designs. She was thrilled, and I could tell she was determined to make it a success. I gave her a team to work with, and she set to work immediately. As the project progressed, I noticed that Juliana was making decisions without consulting me. She would send me updates, but they were always brief and lacking in detail. I started to feel a little uneasy, but I pushed the feeling aside, thinking that she was just trying to prove herself. But as the weeks went by, I began to realize that Juliana was operating with a level of autonomy that I hadn't intended. She was making decisions that affected the entire company, and she wasn't keeping me in the loop. I started to wonder if I had made a mistake in trusting her so implicitly. I called her into my office one day, and I asked her to explain some of the decisions she had made. She was confident and assured, telling me that she had done what she thought was best for the company. I listened, and I had to admit that her reasoning made sense. But I couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. I started to question whether I had given her too much power, whether I had trusted her too much. I didn't know what to do, so I decided to keep a closer eye on her, to see if I could understand what was going on. As I watched her, I noticed that she seemed to be building a following among the other employees. They would look to her for guidance, and she would offer advice and support. It was almost as if she was positioning herself as a leader, someone who could take charge and make decisions for the company. I started to feel a sense of unease, a sense that something was off. I didn't know what Juliana's ultimate goal was, but I knew that I needed to be careful. I couldn't let my trust in her blind me to the potential risks. I decided to do some digging to see if I could uncover any information that would give me a better understanding of what was going on. I started by reviewing company records, looking for any discrepancies or irregularities. And then I stumbled upon something that made my blood run cold. It was a memo, written by Juliana, that outlined a plan to restructure the company. The plan would give her a significant amount of control over the company's operations, and it would allow her to make decisions without my input. I felt a surge of anger and betrayal, and I knew that I had to take action. But as I sat there, staring at the memo, I couldn't help but wonder how this had happened. How had Juliana managed to gain so much influence, and what did she plan to do with it? I knew that I had to find out, and I was determined to get to the bottom of things. Juliana sat at her desk, her fingers flying across the keyboard as she worked on a confidential project. But unbeknownst to her boss, she had been secretly gathering sensitive information about the company. She had access to everything: client lists, financial reports, and business strategies. And she was using it to her advantage. Late at night, Juliana would sneak into the company's database, downloading crucial documents and saving them to a personal drive. She was building a case against her employer, gathering evidence that would give her leverage in case things went sour. But her intentions weren't pure. She had been in talks with a competitor, whispering secrets and promising to bring Verde Design's clients to their side. As the days went by, Juliana's actions became more brazen. She started poaching clients, convincing them to switch to the competitor with promises of better deals and more innovative solutions. The company's revenue began to plummet, and her boss was none the wiser. But Juliana's betrayal didn't stop there. She also sabotaged key projects, causing delays and failures that further damaged the company's reputation. One project in particular, a high-profile campaign for a major client, was on the verge of collapse. Juliana had been overseeing the project, and she had made sure to accidentally delete crucial files and miscommunicate with the team. The client was furious, and Verde Designs was on the brink of losing a major account. The company's CEO was oblivious to the chaos unfolding around him. He trusted Juliana implicitly, and she used that trust to her advantage. But as the company's financials continued to deteriorate, he would soon be forced to take a closer look at the people he trusted. And when he did, he would discover Juliana's deceit. The question was, how much damage would she have done by then? The sound of papers shuffling and computers humming filled the office air as Juliana continued her deceitful work, her fingers moving swiftly and deliberately across the keyboard. The company's downfall was unfolding, and she was right at the center of it. Each keystroke, each click of the mouse, brought Verde Designs closer to disaster, and Juliana was just getting started. 1. I sat stunned, staring at the evidence in front of me. The documents, the emails, the testimony from former clients, it all pointed to one thing: Juliana's betrayal. I felt like I'd been punched in the gut, my breath knocked out of me. How could she do this to me? To Verde Designs? Anger began to simmer beneath the surface, a slow-burning fire that threatened to erupt at any moment. I clenched my fists, my nails digging into my palms as I struggled to contain my rage. I thought about all the times I'd trusted her, all the opportunities I'd given her, and it made my blood boil. But as the shock and anger began to wear off, determination took its place. I knew I had to act, and fast. I couldn't let Juliana get away with this. I started to think about my next move, about how I could take her down and protect my company. I picked up the phone and dialed the number of my lawyer, a sharp and ruthless woman who'd been with me through thick and thin. "I need your help," I said, my voice tight with anger. "Juliana's been stealing from me, poaching clients. I have proof." My lawyer listened intently, her voice calm and collected. "We'll take care of this," she said. "We'll build a case, gather evidence, and take her to court. But first, we need to act quickly to mitigate the damage. Have you talked to your clients?" I shook my head, even though she couldn't see me. "No, not yet. I've been trying to process everything." "Okay, let's get to work," she said. "We'll issue a statement, let the clients know what's going on, and then we'll start building our case against Juliana." I nodded, feeling a sense of purpose wash over me. I was going to take Juliana down, no matter what it took. I was going to protect my company, my clients, and my reputation. I was going to make sure she paid for what she'd done. As I hung up the phone, I felt a sense of resolve settle over me. I was ready to fight, to take on Juliana and whatever she threw my way. I was ready to defend my company, my livelihood, and my reputation. "Bring it on," I thought. "I'm ready for you, Juliana." The next few days were a blur of meetings, phone calls, and strategy sessions. My lawyer and I worked tirelessly to build our case, gathering evidence and interviewing witnesses. I was determined to make sure Juliana was held accountable for her actions, and I was willing to do whatever it took to make that happen. As I sat in my office, surrounded by papers and files, I couldn't help but think about the extent of Juliana's betrayal. She had stolen from me, lied to me, and damaged my reputation. But I wasn't going to let her get away with it. I was going to fight back, and I was going to win. The question was, what would Juliana do next? Would she try to deny the allegations, or would she try to negotiate a settlement? I didn't know, but I was ready for her. I was ready to take her on, to defend my company and my reputation. And I was going to come out on top. I sat down with my lawyer to discuss my plan for revenge against Juliana. We pored over the evidence, discussing every detail, every document, every conversation. My lawyer was thorough, meticulous, and determined. Together, we mapped out a strategy to take Juliana down. First, we needed to gather more evidence. My lawyer instructed me to dig through company records, emails, and financial reports. We needed to build a solid case against Juliana, one that would stand up in court. I spent hours poring over documents, looking for any discrepancies or irregularities that would prove Juliana's betrayal. As we gathered evidence, my lawyer began to build a case against Juliana. She filed lawsuits, gathered witness statements, and prepared for a potential court battle. I was amazed at her expertise, her knowledge of the law, and her determination to see justice served. Meanwhile, I prepared myself for a confrontation with Juliana. I knew it wouldn't be easy, but I was determined to face her, to look her in the eye and tell her that I knew what she'd done. I practiced my words, my tone, and my delivery. I wanted to be calm, collected, and assertive. My lawyer advised me to wait, to let the law take its course. But I knew I needed to confront Juliana, to let her know that I wasn't afraid of her. I was ready to take control, to stand up for myself and my company. As the days turned into weeks, our case against Juliana grew stronger. We had evidence, witnesses, and a solid legal strategy. My lawyer was confident that we would win, that Juliana would be held accountable for her actions. But Juliana was not going down without a fight. I knew she would try to deny the allegations, to shift the blame or downplay her role in the betrayal. I was ready for her, though. I was ready to present our case, to show the evidence, and to demand justice. The stage was set for a confrontation, a battle of wills, and a fight for justice. I was ready to take on Juliana, to defend my company, and to protect my reputation. The question was, what would Juliana do next? Would she try to negotiate, or would she fight back? I didn't know, but I was prepared for anything. As I pursued justice against Juliana, I encountered numerous obstacles. The legal process was slow and arduous, with Juliana's lawyers filing motion after motion to delay the proceedings. My lawyer and I had to navigate the complex web of laws and regulations, fighting to get our case heard. The legal hurdles were frustrating, but the emotional turmoil was even more challenging. Reliving the betrayal and hurt through the court process was like reopening a wound. Some days, I felt like I was making progress, while others, the pain and anger felt overwhelming. I questioned whether I was doing the right thing, whether it was worth the time and energy. Self-doubt crept in, making me wonder if I was overreacting or if Juliana's actions were truly as serious as I thought. What if I was wrong? What if I was misinterpreting the situation? These doubts lingered, making it hard to focus. Despite these challenges, I pushed forward. My lawyer's guidance and support were invaluable, helping me stay focused on the goal of holding Juliana accountable. With each step forward, I gained strength and determination. I was fighting not just for myself, but for my company and the people who trusted me. The journey was long and difficult, but I was determined to see it through. I would not let Juliana's betrayal define me. Instead, I would use it as an opportunity to grow stronger and more resilient. I would fight for justice, and I would emerge victorious. The days turned into weeks, and the weeks into months. The legal battle was intense, with both sides presenting their arguments and evidence. I presented my case, detailing Juliana's betrayal and the damage she had caused. Juliana's defense was weak, but her lawyers worked tirelessly to create doubt and uncertainty. As the verdict approached, I felt a mix of anticipation and anxiety. Would justice be served? Would Juliana be held accountable for her actions? The uncertainty was agonizing, but I remained steadfast, knowing that I had done everything I could to prove my case. Now, it was up to the court to decide. I was getting closer to exposing Juliana's betrayal. My lawyer and I had gathered overwhelming evidence, and we were preparing for the final showdown. We had documented every transaction, every email, and every conversation that proved Juliana's deceit. The evidence was damning, and I was confident that Juliana would be held accountable. As we prepared for the confrontation, I couldn't help but feel a sense of anticipation. I was ready to confront Juliana, to look her in the eye and tell her that I knew what she had done. I had practiced my words, my tone, and my delivery. I was determined to stay calm and collected, no matter what Juliana threw my way. My lawyer and I had a strategy in place. We would call Juliana into a meeting, present the evidence, and give her a chance to respond. I was ready to listen to her excuses, to hear her denials, and to watch her squirm. But I was also prepared for the possibility that Juliana might try to shift the blame or downplay her role in the betrayal. The day of the meeting arrived, and I was nervous but determined. I walked into the conference room, my lawyer by my side, and Juliana across from us. I looked her straight in the eye, and I knew that she knew that I knew. The air was thick with tension as we began to present our evidence. "Juliana, we have evidence that proves your betrayal," I said, my voice firm and steady. "We know about the secret meetings, the hidden accounts, and the lies you told to our clients. It's time to face the consequences of your actions." Juliana's face turned pale, and she looked like she had been caught off guard. She stuttered, trying to form words, but nothing came out. My lawyer handed her a stack of documents, evidence of Juliana's deceit. "What do you have to say for yourself?" my lawyer asked, her voice firm but controlled. Juliana looked at the documents and her eyes widened in shock. She knew she was caught, and she knew she had no way out. The anticipation was building, and I couldn't wait to see how Juliana would react. Would she break down, or would she try to fight back? The drama was unfolding, and I was ready to see it through to the end. I sat across from Juliana, my lawyer by my side, and the evidence in front of us. The air was thick with tension as I looked her straight in the eye. "Juliana, we know what you've done," I said, my voice firm. "We have proof of your betrayal, and it's time to face the consequences." Juliana's face turned pale, and she looked like she had been caught off guard. She stuttered, trying to form words, but nothing came out. My lawyer handed her a stack of documents, evidence of Juliana's deceit. "What do you have to say for yourself?" my lawyer asked, her voice firm but controlled. Juliana looked at the documents, and her eyes widened in shock. She knew she was caught, and she knew she had no way out. She tried to speak, but her voice was barely above a whisper. I can explain," she stammered. "Explain?" I repeated, my voice rising. "You think you can explain away your betrayal? You think you can justify stealing from me, lying to me, and sabotaging my company?" Juliana shook her head, tears welling up in her eyes. "I didn't mean to hurt you," she said. "I was in a tough spot, and I didn't know what else to do." "A tough spot?" I repeated, incredulous. "You were in a tough spot, and you decided to betray me? You decided to steal from me and lie to me?" Juliana nodded, tears streaming down her face. "I'm sorry," she said. "I know I made a mistake. I know I hurt you." I looked at her, disgust and anger written all over my face. "You're sorry?" I repeated. "You're sorry? You think sorry is enough? You think sorry will make everything okay?" Juliana shook her head, tears streaming down her face. "I don't know," she said. "I just know I made a mistake, and I'm willing to make it right." I laughed, a cold, hard laugh. "Make it right?" I repeated. "You think you can make it right? You've damaged my company, you've damaged my reputation, and you've damaged our relationship. There's no making it right." The room was silent, the tension between us palpable. Juliana looked at me, tears streaming down her face, and I looked back at her, anger and disgust written all over my face. The confrontation was intense, the drama unfolding before our eyes. "What now?" Juliana asked, her voice barely above a whisper. My lawyer spoke up, her voice firm. "Now, we'll take the necessary steps to rectify the situation. We'll work with the authorities to determine the extent of the damage and find a way to recover the losses." Juliana nodded, tears streaming down her face. She knew she was in trouble, and she knew she had no way out. The confrontation was over, but the drama was far from it. The consequences of Juliana's actions would be severe, and she would have to face them head-on. As the meeting came to a close, I stood up, my lawyer by my side. "This isn't over," I said, looking Juliana straight in the eye. "This is just the beginning." Juliana nodded, tears streaming down her face. She knew she was in trouble, and she knew she had no way out. The drama would continue to unfold, and the consequences would be severe. But for now, the confrontation was over, and the next step would be taken. The accusations flew across the table like daggers. "You're a traitor, Juliana," I said, my voice low and even. "You've been working against me the entire time." Juliana's eyes widened in shock, but she quickly regained her composure. "That's not true," she said, her voice firm. "I'm loyal to you and the company." I laughed, a cold, hard sound. "Don't lie to me," I said. "I have proof. I know all about the secret meetings and the hidden accounts." Juliana's face turned pale, and she looked like she'd been punched in the gut. "How did you—" she started to ask, but I cut her off. "That's not important," I said. "What's important is that I know what you've done, and I'm not going to let you get away with it." Juliana's expression changed from shock to anger. "You don't understand," she said. "You don't know what it's like to be in my shoes." "I don't care about your excuses," I said. "I care about the facts. And the facts are that you've betrayed me and this company." The tension between us was thick, like a fog that clung to everything. Juliana's eyes flashed with anger, and she leaned forward, her voice rising. "You don't know what you're talking about," she said. "You're just a naive little rich girl who thinks she can run a company without getting her hands dirty." I felt a surge of anger at her words, but I kept my cool. "I'm not naive," I said, "and I'm not a little rich girl. I'm a businesswoman and I won't be spoken to like that." Juliana sneered at me, her lips curling up in disgust. "You're just a puppet on strings," she said. "You don't know what's really going on in this company." I leaned forward, my eyes locked on hers. "I know more than you think I do," I said. "And I'm going to make sure that everyone knows what you've done." The accusations and denials flew back and forth, each one landing like a blow. The drama was intense, the emotional stakes high. It was a battle of wills, a clash of personalities. As the argument escalated, revelations began to surface. Juliana's mask began to slip, and I saw glimpses of the real person beneath. She was driven by desperation and a desire for power. "I did it for my family," she said, her voice cracking. "I did it because I had to." I raised an eyebrow, intrigued. "What do you mean?" I asked. Juliana hesitated, unsure of how much to reveal. But something about my expression must have put her at ease, because she began to talk. "I have a sister," she said. "She's sick, and I needed the money to pay for her treatment." The revelation hung in the air, a surprise twist in the drama. I didn't know what to make of it, but I knew it changed things. As the scene drew to a close, the emotional intensity was still high. The accusations and denials had given way to a deeper understanding, but the drama was far from over. The question was, what would happen next? I stood in the courtroom, my eyes fixed on Juliana as the judge delivered the verdict. "The defendant is found guilty of breach of contract, theft, and sabotage," the judge said. "She is hereby ordered to pay restitution to the plaintiff in the amount of $1 million. I felt a sense of satisfaction, knowing that justice had been served. Juliana's betrayal had been exposed, and she would have to face the consequences. But as I looked at Juliana, I saw the toll the ordeal had taken on her. She was defeated, her eyes sunken, her shoulders slumped. She knew she had lost, and she knew she would have to pay the price. The courtroom erupted into a flurry of activity as the lawyers and clients began to discuss the implications of the verdict. I stood up, my lawyer by my side, and faced Juliana. "It's over," I said, my voice firm. "You've lost, and now you have to face the consequences." Juliana looked up at me, tears streaming down her face. "I'm sorry," she said. "I was desperate, and I made a mistake." I nodded, feeling a sense of closure. "I know," I said. "But the damage is done. The company was hurt, and people lost their trust." The reality of the situation sank in, and Juliana's face crumpled. She knew she had lost everything: her job, her reputation, her freedom. She would have to start over, rebuild her life from scratch. As I turned to leave, I felt a sense of resolution. I had achieved my goal, but at what cost? The company would take time to recover, and the wounds would take even longer to heal. I walked out of the courtroom, my lawyer by my side. "It's over," I said to her. "Justice has been served." My lawyer nodded. "Yes, it has," she said. "But the real question is, what's next? How will you move forward from here?" I took a deep breath, knowing that the road ahead would be long and difficult, but I was ready. I was ready to rebuild, to recover, and to move on. The outcome was bittersweet. Juliana had been brought to justice, but the cost had been high. The company had suffered, and people had lost their trust. But I knew that with time, we would heal, and we would move on. As I walked out of the courthouse, I felt a sense of determination. I would rebuild the company, restore its reputation, and make sure that something like this would never happen again. The journey would be long, but I was ready to take the first step. I stood in my office, looking out over the city as I contemplated the road ahead. The verdict had been in for weeks, and now it was time to rebuild. The company was bruised and battered, but I was determined to restore it to its former glory. I started by assessing the damage. The financials were a mess, and morale was at an all-time low, but I was confident that with the right strategy, we could recover. I called a meeting with my senior staff, and we began to map out a plan. We need to focus on rebuilding trust, I said. We need to show our clients and our employees that we're committed to transparency and integrity. My team nodded in agreement, and we set to work. We implemented new policies, increased transparency, and worked to rebuild relationships with our clients. It wasn't easy, but slowly, we began to see progress. As the weeks turned into months, the company began to heal. The financials improved, and morale began to lift. But the experience had left its mark on me. I couldn't shake the feeling that I had let people down, that I had trusted the wrong person. I reflected on the experience, thinking about what I could have done differently. I realized that I had been too trusting, too willing to give people the benefit of the doubt. But I also knew that I couldn't change the past. All I could do was move forward. One day, as I was going through some old files, I stumbled upon a note that Juliana had written. It was a simple thank you note, but it made me realize that I had never really known her. She had been a stranger, a colleague, and a traitor. But she had also been a person, with her own motivations and desires. I folded the note and put it in my pocket, feeling a sense of closure. It was time to move on, to focus on the future. The company was on the road to recovery, and I was ready to lead it forward. As I looked out the window, I knew that the experience had changed me. I was more cautious now, more guarded, but I was also more determined. I was determined to rebuild the company, to make it stronger and more resilient. And I was determined to never let something like this happen again. The road ahead would be long, but I was ready. I was ready to face the challenges, to overcome the obstacles, and to emerge stronger on the other side. The experience had been painful, but it had also been a valuable lesson, and I would carry that lesson with me for the rest of my life. I took a deep breath, feeling a sense of resolve. It was time to move forward, to rebuild, and to create a brighter future for the company, and I was ready to do whatever it took to make that happen. I was reflecting on the past few months. The experience had been difficult, but it had also been transformative. I had grown as a person and as a leader. I had learned to be more cautious, more guarded, but also more resilient. As I looked out the window, I thought about Juliana. She had lost everything: her job, her reputation, her freedom. She would have to start over, rebuild her life from scratch. I felt a pang of sadness for her, but I knew that she had brought it upon herself. The consequences of her actions had been severe. She had lost the trust of everyone around her, including her colleagues and friends. She would have to work hard to regain that trust, but it would be an uphill battle. I thought about the others who had been impacted by Juliana's actions: the employees who had lost their jobs, the clients who had lost money, the investors who had lost faith in the company. The ripple effects had been far-reaching, and it would take time for everyone to heal. As I pondered the impact of Juliana's actions, my assistant walked in with a report. "The company's financials are improving," she said. "We're on track to meet our projections." I nodded, feeling a sense of satisfaction. "That's good news," I said. "Let's keep working to build on that momentum." My assistant smiled and left the office. I sat down at my desk, feeling a sense of determination. I was committed to rebuilding the company, to making it stronger and more resilient. And I was committed to learning from the experience, to growing as a person and as a leader. As the days turned into weeks, the company continued to heal. The financials improved, and morale began to lift. But the experience had left its mark on everyone. We were all more cautious now, more guarded. But we were also more determined, more focused on building a better future. I thought about Juliana again, wondering what she was doing. Was she rebuilding her life? Was she learning from her mistakes? I didn't know. But I hoped that she was. I hoped that she was finding a way to move forward, to start anew. The months passed, and the company continued to thrive. We had learned from the experience, and we had grown as a result. We were stronger, more resilient, and more determined. And I was proud of what we had accomplished. As I looked out the window, I felt a sense of pride and accomplishment. We had overcome the challenges, and we had emerged stronger on the other side. The experience had been difficult, but it had also been a valuable lesson. And I knew that I would carry that lesson with me for the rest of my life. The phone on my desk rang, breaking the silence. I picked it up, answering the call. "Yes?" I said. "Congratulations," a voice said on the other end. "You've done a remarkable job rebuilding the company." I smiled, feeling a sense of gratitude. "Thank you," I said. It wasn't easy, but it was worth it. The voice on the other end chuckled. "I can imagine," it said. "You're a true leader, and the company is lucky to have you." I thanked the caller again, feeling a sense of appreciation, and as I hung up the phone, I knew that I was exactly where I was meant to be. I was leading the company forward, and I was proud of what we had accomplished. This is the end of my story. Thank you for watching, and if you like this kind of content, kindly leave us a like, share the video, and subscribe to the channel for more stories like this. Thank you.